On May 22nd, 1945, with the war in Europe over, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill received a memorandum from the Joint Planning Staff of the War Cabinet. The report concluded that if the United States were to remain completely concentrated on the Pacific War, the Soviet Red Army could seize Western Europe with ease and pose a threat to Britain, which would then find itself in much the same situation as she had been in 1940, when she was fighting against Nazi Germany and was dependent on air and sea forces to repel an invasion. Except this time, the enemy would have more rockets than the Germans, and even more men. This was a fearful prospect for the British Prime Minister, as at this time, it was believed that the war in the Pacific could still last for quite some time. This also raised the prospect of the Soviet Union leaving the Allied side and forming a military coalition with the Japanese. To protect against such an outcome, the British Prime Minister ordered the authors of the report to compile a memorandum on what it thought might happen if the British Empire, the United States, and the Polish and the German armies had to go to war against a Russo-Japanese alliance in July 1945 in order to impose upon the Soviet Union a square deal for Poland. Although that did not imply that the goal of such an offensive was to stop at Poland and not march further east, meaning that the memorandum would also have to consider the possibility of an Allied invasion of the Soviet Union. This scenario was codenamed Operation Unthinkable and was supposed to launch on July 1st, 1945. This operation was analysed in a detailed report on June 8th and was complete with annexes including maps and opposing forces. The report pointed out that the Soviets outnumbered the Western Allies by 3-1 in Europe. The study concluded that it would be a long and costly war, in which it was extremely doubtful that such an operation against the Soviets would achieve a limited and quick success. The report also stated that there would be no hope of defeating the Soviets without a large proportion of the vast resources of the United States. This meant complete failure, as the Americans at this time were completely focused on fighting the Japanese and would have had little interest in going to war against the Soviet Union. As a result of this pessimistic scenario, on June 10th, Churchill ordered for a follow-up report to be produced, which would look at the possibility of a Soviet attack on the British Isles and the ways to defend it. The new report, produced on July the 11th, stated that if the Soviet Union decided on an attack on the British Isles, they would have 4 different ways to do so. 1. By cutting the British sea communications. 2. By land invasion. 3. By an air attack. 4. By rocket or other new methods. The report stated that the first way of cutting British sea communications was off the table for the Soviets, as they would be unable to develop, either by submarine or air attack, any immediate threat to British communications, and the level of threat would be similar to the one exerted by Germany in 1940. Regarding a land invasion, either by sea or air, the report stated that the Soviets would be greatly handicapped by their lack of experience in this form of warfare. Although the report did not rule out the eventual possibility of an invasion, it stated that such an attack was clearly a matter of many years away, before the Soviets could build up the necessary amphibious forces and a merchant navy to give them even a slightest chance of success against proper defence measures. The third option of an air attack was also seen as unlikely to succeed. The report stated that even if the Soviets succeeded in taking over Western Europe, the British Air Forces would be able to inflict large losses on Soviet air forces and prevent them from achieving any decisive results. This meant that the British forces would be able to resist the first 3 forms of attack stated in the report: land, naval, and air attack. However, much more danger was foreseen by the 4th option: an attack by rockets or new methods. The report asserted that the Soviets would likely make full use of new weapons, such as rockets, and that they were fully aware of the recent developments and technical dates. It was also stated that the Soviets would likely begin large-scale production of these weapons at an early date, and if they used them against the British Isles, they would be able to inflict much bigger casualties than the Germans had during the war. Worryingly, it was acknowledged that, at present time, there was no method of reducing this threat, and the report concluded that it was only through the use of these rockets and other new weapons that the Soviets could develop any serious threat to the country. In July 1945, a general election was held in the United Kingdom, and the results, announced on July 26th, showed a massive defeat for Churchill's Conservatives, and a landslide victory for the Labour Party led by Clement Attlee. As a result, Attlee replaced Churchill and became the new Prime Minister of the country. The new government, led by Attlee, quickly ignored the draft plan, and as a result, Operation Unthinkable was abandoned. The operation stands as the first Cold War era contingency plan for war against the Soviet Union, and would stand as the first of many plans that would be developed in the future.